Hey guys, my name's Akaksha Jha, and I'm currently serving as the Executive Assistant for the National Parliamentarians Council. I'm so excited to bring episode 1 of season 2 of Pros and Parli. Joining us today, we have none other than former FBLA High School National Parliamentarian and student at Cornell University, Elise Carpenter. Elise, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I'm okay. We had our issues setting up this meeting, but other than that, I'm doing great. Let's start off with a little icebreaker. So I asked you to prepare 2 truths and 1 lie. Would you mind sharing that with us?
Of course. So, we'll start off with I have raised baby squirrels. That's one. My next one is I love oranges, but hate orange flavored anything. And my third one is I have been to every continent but Antarctica.
I feel like the first one is true. The squirrels, I feel like, I don't know, you just give me that vibe. And I feel like I've seen something about that somewhere. Every continent is kind of crazy. I don't know, every continent? I'm gonna say the lie is to every continent except for Antarctica one.
That is true. I've actually not been many places.
Oh, okay, so that was the lie?
That is the lie. Yeah,
Wow, okay.
you got
So
it.
what continents have you been to?
Not many. I've been to North America, obviously, South America, and Europe, but nowhere else.
Okay, that's still quite a few. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Mhm.
Great. Can you start off and tell us a little bit about your background and what you're studying now at Cornell?
I'd love to. So I am a New Yorker, born and raised, not from the city, but from the New York City suburbs. And I'm currently at Cornell University studying computational biology. So I'm really interested in the living systems of our world, particularly more on the environmental and ecological side of biology, and how we can model these systems with computers and use that to mitigate climate change and other current issues.
Wow, that's really cool. What made you decide to study that?
I've always been really fascinated with our world and biology in general. I love animals, as I mentioned. I've raised baby squirrels. That's through being a New York State wildlife rehabilitator. But I also really love technology and computer science. And so I think it honestly has to do in some ways with the same reasons I'm interested in parliamentary procedure. It's all about the systems and the codes of our world and kind of breaking things down in terms of how my brain works.
Can you tell us about why you chose to run for national parliamentarian?
Of course, yeah, I'd love to. So I had been involved in FBLA since eighth grade when I chose to run going into my senior year. And at that point, I had been involved in FBLA at all sorts of different levels, from the chapter to being a state officer to even being on the Eastern Region Council for Team 71's National Eastern Region Vice President Krisha Patel. And I think that that experience in particular, seeing a national officer and everything that she did, made me really realize that I really wanted to do national office. Now, for parliamentary procedure in particular, as I mentioned, I really love systems and procedures. And with an organization as big and doing as many things as FBLA, there's something really fascinating about the idea of learning more about the bylaws and the structure in which that works.
It's pretty cool, especially how it all ties into what you're doing now. Do you have any advice for people who are looking to get into parliamentary procedure?
I would say just to not overwhelm yourself too much from the beginning. Start with the basics, stuff like shameless plug, the Parley packet. And, just those really general things, making motions. In general, you don't need to know everything about Robert's Rules of Order. You don't need to read it cover to cover from the beginning in order to have a general sense of parliamentary procedure. And then as you get those more basic understandings, and especially start to practice it more with your local chapter or with your parliamentary procedure team, then you can start building on that and learning more and more into the depth of it.
That's pretty cool. Be honest, how much time did you spend studying for the Parley protest?
Probably over, definitely over 100 hours, probably 100 hours just in that week leading up to it. And then was my goal, I remember. And then, of course, I had a bunch of prior Parley Pro experience and practice, and yeah, lots of studying.
What do you think some of the ways that Parli Pro has helped you are?
I would say it's a lot more than just the applications of parliamentary procedure, but also starting with how I studied for that test for parliamentarian. I'm now using those study tactics for my classes at Cornell, and you learn a lot about that. But then also in terms of the applications and the speaking, the way that you address others in a meeting, I think it all carries with you in a bunch of different ways when you start to continue to work in group settings in the future.
What do you think some of the misconceptions about parliamentary procedure are that maybe like a first year FBLA member might think at first glance?
I think to a lot of first year FBLA members, parliamentary procedure seems really inaccessible. They look at it and they hear about Robert's Rules of Order and hear it's a really thick book, and it might not be currently applied in their chapter because other people in the past have looked at it and thought, this seems like a lot, this isn't worth it. When in reality, parliamentary procedure, it can be applied in different levels, and it really is just basic procedure for running meetings. Chances are your chapter, even if they're not explicitly doing so, is using parliamentary procedure in one way or another. And the fact that a lot of people think of it as this distant, far off thing is just not accurate.
Yeah, I totally agree. Something that we're trying to do on our local chapter level is try to implement parliamentary procedure more because we have a local chapter parliamentarian, but they never had any defined roles that actually work with Parli Pro. And on the National Parliamentarians Council this year, we're trying to work towards making Parli Pro seem less intimidating, and we're trying to focus on like a video series and things for that. So I'm really glad to hear your input about that. What have been some of your favorite FBLA memories or experiences so far, or in your time in FBLA?
That is a great question because I have so many incredible FBLA experiences, and they all come down to, at the root, different people I've met. So I have great memories of running up to my fellow state officers in the airport when I see them at NFLC, and great memories of then reuniting with friends at the National Leadership Conference who I met when I was in different states and different places. I think FBLA at the end of the day is incredible both for the opportunity it provides in terms of everything you can do with business, but even more incredible for all the people you meet and that community that you get.
What were some of your favorite parts of being a national officer?
I loved, again, meeting people, I got the opportunity to go to Nevada for their state leadership conference, which was incredible. But then also at places like NFLC, getting to see a bunch of people. And I also just really loved the opportunities, honestly, to get to speak and practice that with people because I had never been in a lot of positions where I'd had to practice public speaking, and getting to start to do workshops and then finally speaking in front of 16,000 people at the National Leadership Conference was really a life-changing experience for me.
This is something that you kind of touched on earlier whenever you talked about how Parli Pro has helped you study now and of that sort. But how do you think being national parliamentarian and learning all that about Parli Pro has affected you now?
I would say that just learning all that I did about parliamentary procedure has given me a more in-depth understanding of how a bunch of different organizations operate, I would say. So looking at just companies, looking at our government, even though these organizations and our government obviously don't use exactly Robert's Rules of Order, I think you get a lot more of an understanding of what it takes to get something passed and through, and a lot more of an understanding about how these things come about. And then just national parliamentarian in general, it really is a life-changing experience to just put yourself out there so much. And that goes for a lot of FBLA positions. I would say it really gets you out of your shell to be in positions where you're doing so much networking and interacting with others. And it's a really beautiful experience I'd recommend to anyone who asks me.
That's really cool. Thank you for all you've done as national parliamentarian. You've definitely left your mark on FBLA.
Thank you.
Okay, this one's like kind of like a troll question, but you can answer however you want. How would you describe what a parliamentarian does to someone who doesn't know?
I would describe them as an advisor to whoever's leading the meeting. So a parliamentarian is there to make sure that meetings operate smoothly and that everyone knows the rules. So the chair, in most cases, has the parliamentarian to be able to consult them about what exactly are the rules of the meeting if they get a little bit lost. So, and this is important to keep in mind in a lot of situations because you might think if you're the president of a club going in, parliamentary procedure is so daunting. I need to both be running the meeting and knowing everything. But that's where the parliamentarian comes in because the parliamentarian can help you out in knowing those things so that you can really focus on running the meeting smoothly.
Okay, last question. If there was someone who was on the verge of deciding whether or not to run for like a state parliamentarian or a national parliamentarian office, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to 100% run for parliamentarian because it will be a life-changing experience. Any FBLA office position puts you out there in ways that you never have been before. It pushes you in ways that you likely never have been before. And you'll meet so many people that you never would have otherwise had the opportunity to meet. And of course, you'll be in the coolest possible position while doing so. So definitely run.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today, Elise.
Thank you so much for having me.